We're here tonight just to go over some things that we want to talk about that concerns us about building a jail in Greene County. And at this point, we have a number of different issues that concern us. I've sent around a sort of an agenda. However, it was more of a talking points for us to talk about things that have bothered us about this project. So, you know my take on it for the most part, where I've been, and I've tried to bring it up every month in public safety. And so, one more time wouldn't hurt. And I think if we go through the items that we talked about, the items that we voted on, the items that we want to discuss, we might be able to come to some sort of consensus for the future. Sean has a lot of work planned out for the jail proposal. I don't want to see him spend that money if we're not going to agree with it. And I think it's better for us to stop the project in that case and not do anything, instead of keep wandering down this road where we can't make any decisions. So we're going to open it up to that kind of spirit. Again, just say what you think. Let me know where you're coming from, and not just for me, but for anybody else in the room here. Aiden, did you want to add to that?
No, I know that we all have kind of a perspective, so I thought maybe in a forum like this, amongst each other, we could each put out there what we think, would motivate us and what our residents are saying to see what we can do as a conclusion.
So the first thing I had on my agenda, this talking points thing, was some introduction. We do have Mike Spitz here. Mike has been our superintendent of corrections. He's very well versed in the item that deals with jails or prisons. And of course, Sean has gone through the construction of a jail in Michigan when he worked there. He's been very active in dealing with our with SMRT, our needs assessment people. He's been very active with the Pike Company, our construction manager, and with SMRT, our architects, I'm sorry, with Ricky Greene for our needs assessment. So he's here, he can answer questions, and Mike can answer questions if you have particular concerns about size or the way the protocols have to be enacted for a jail. But the first thing I put on there is that we had voted down the Columbia County option in public safety. Everybody was there, I believe, and they didn't have a chance to vote necessarily, but they were there. Public safety voted it down. However, I did want to make sure that those who did not have an opportunity to vote to express any continued feelings about this particular option, and also to clear the air if they thought that they were somewhat pushed into a corner by the public safety doing that particular action. So I put down here the list of things that I thought Columbia County option would concern me. Number one, besides the fact that the Commission of Corrections does not allow a shared jail at this point. In order to do that, Columbia and Greene would have to submit a design to the state legislature. They'd have to push it through their committees. They'd have to push it through a vote of the Assembly and the Senate to allow us to have a special home rule decision where we could build a joint project. The way that would look, I don't know. I don't think it's ever been done. I think clearly it's been voted down before. But in order to do that, the Columbia County option, just for the sake of reviewing this, would have needed a new pod built on their current structure, and of course they would have had to have upgraded their visitors area, their medical, their cafeteria, their things that the general population uses in a jail. The site where they were thinking about building it, maybe that's changed, but the site was near a massive landslide that occurred in 2017, which made the area to the one side very unstable. If they decide to change it to the other side, then they've got to buy property, and that was, of course, something that would have to be negotiated and put up to decided by the Columbia County Board of Supervisors. The costs that have been associated with that have been purely guesswork. We have no real idea as to how much it's going to cost to add a pod on, to upgrade the shared services, to upgrade the services of the population, to bring this all together as a single structure to the satisfaction of the Commission of Corrections. If we did that, if it was even allowed, then of course we would have to lay off all our corrections personnel, stop using the jail as a location to house prisoners. Besides the resulting loss in jobs, it would implicate make the law enforcement responsible for taking over prisoners to Columbia County, making sure they're taken care of or categorized, and then bring them back here and then come back here to Greene County to do law enforcement again. It seemed like a very hard, not very hard, but at least a very complicated way of doing law enforcement. So those were the issues that concerned me. I don't know, I've probably said that 100 times already, but those are the issues that I think most of us were talking about when the resolution to go with a shared jail concept was proposed and then was voted down in public safety, for the simple reason that a feasibility study would not have solved the problem. You would have had to go, if that were allowed, if we had passed on that and the feasibility came out okay, then we were committed to doing the design and then probably the pushing through the state legislature of a home rule message, and then of course the construction of this joint project, the cost of which nobody seems to know for sure exactly how much it's going to be. So that's where I stood on it, and said that to all the people that have emailed me or that wanted my response to that particular issue. Besides the fact that a lot of my constituents, and I think Carrie's already pointed this out, were not in favor of losing the jail in Greene County to go to Columbia County in the first place. However, if it were a legal matter, if it could be done legally at this point, maybe my considerations would have been changed. I'm not sure they would have been. Then that's where I stood. That's what came up in public safety. That's where we were when we left this particular topic off last. Anybody want to have a further say?
I have a question about, you mentioned home rule a few times. What do you mean by that? Like the legislature would be deferential or something to
I've been given to understand that if we were to propose a project where we would jointly share a jail in Columbia County, give the design to the Commissioner of Corrections and to the state legislature, they would then could pass a home rule, a home rule exception to the fact that you have to have your own jail.
Oh, I see.
Because every county right now is required to have their own jail. And Sean, is that?
Home rules are just specific to the counties that are requesting it versus the entire 57 counties outside of the metropolitan area. It's just like when we submit our annual sales tax renewal, it's a home rule message because in theory it's just relative to Greene County.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, it would be just relative to the two counties who are requesting it. So it doesn't affect the remainder of the state.
And there's a lot of precedent for that in the specific section of law, correction law 500. There's actually 47 exceptions for counties right now. So there's precedent for that. And the belief by the governor's head of public safety was that this would be a very easy thing to get through the legislature this session. Different than in the past because of this exception as opposed to a change for the entire state.
To clarify it? Okay.
Yeah.
My understanding is that the discussions with Columbia County thus far have not really taken into consideration a shared facility. As we share a facility with the Columbia Greene Community College, we actually own half of that, they own the other half. And this, what I've heard so far doesn't allude to that at all.
Yeah, I think we've been using the term shared facility when there's been no negotiations done on that. I'm sure that they want to keep ownership of their own jail, as we would want to here. However, I'm sure negotiations could lead to the, I think one of the concerns is that the shared facility would share correction personnel as well. Maybe that wouldn't happen, maybe it would. That's not, we've not gotten that far with it yet. At this point, we've only got as far as the feasibility study to see if it's okay to build on that particular site or somewhere near it. And that is what voted down.
And Bill, on that point, when we've sat with Columbia County Board of Supervisors, what they talked about was if this was to proceed forward and the facility upgrade, we would have ownership of what we've paid for. Part ownership, say if it was a pod or that type of thing, and you can just work that out as a price of what their overall structure is, a percentage of ownership as to what you just put into it through a bond or whatever would occur. And they understood that's where we would come from. Now, they also said they weren't interested in just giving ownership of what they have in their existing facility to Greene County. There's no reason for them to do that. They didn't seem interested in it at all, unless I didn't think they were interested in that part. But when you look at a negotiation, a contract, a shared service contract, when you go forward with a bonding, if it's 30 years, that bonding can hold you in that agreement, unless they're willing to buy you out of that contract, potentially. I mean, this can all be worked through just legal avenues of a contract. So, but yes, they did not think about sharing their facility in terms of their structure, their operation as of now, what their residents, their taxpayers have paid for. It would be if an addition was built and so on. So that's as far as we had gotten, basically.
We
on
had
it.
preliminary conversations about cost utilization as well, so basically the idea would be similar to the college, and that would be a per bed day cost based on our actual utilization. So did Sean or Bill, these are the numbers that the controller had put together. Was this shared with everyone? Yeah, so these are the numbers that Ron
When we had sat
Cavanera
down with the-
had sat down and given to us.
Our Secretary of State rep.
Everybody got this?
Yeah.
Yes.
From Ron
I
Cavanera?
handed them out to everybody in their mailboxes.
Okay. I didn't get one of mine.
Get my money.
So this is the Columbia and Greene County Jail Shared Services Model?
Right, and the breakdown of the way Ron figured the
Yeah,
cost.
okay,
Yes.
okay.
Any
Well, I
other-
wasn't a voting member, but I support the vote of the committee. And I think that represents the majority of this board, and I think that that's democracy. And unless somebody's going to fund the feasibility study, which is only an engineering study, my understanding, then it's dead. So I think that decision's been made. I support the decision.
So I feel that if this board does not see all options through to their end in a diligent manner, I don't think we would have any kind of credibility with the public in that regard.
Well,
And
I can come
so-
up with another option tomorrow. Are we going to see that through to the end? I mean,
If it's a
Life is
sensible
all about
option, if it's a
choices.
taxpayer-saving option, then yes, Lee, I would support it 100%. And
Yeah.
it doesn't matter if it's this department or whatever department it is in this county. Consolidation, we looked at solid waste consolidation. Everyone seems so far amicable to that. I mean, it's no different. No different. It's expanding our tax base to 2 counties to pay for the same service.
It's different in the number one fact that it's legal.
And it's an authority.
I mean,
That's an authority, so
It's different.
you would
It's
see
not
it's
the
an
same.
authority
completely different.
You
in a
can't.
regional jail.
You can't. There is no regional jail.
What I'm saying is if you set this process through,
But you
That's
can't
what
spend
could occur.
taxpayer money on an illegal precedent.
So I
I
take
don't know if it's
issue with
illegal.
this concept
It has
of
to be worked out.
illegal. While it is not explicitly authorized in the legislation, and the general belief is that there would need to be this sort of one-off exception created explicitly, there's lots of things that are not explicitly authorized by law, which are not in fact illegal. And we do have, and this really hasn't been pursued, but the opinion of the Attorney General indicating that in fact regional jails are in fact authorized, and there's no definition of what those regional jails consist of. So I take issue with this concept that it's illegal. Even if we took the step to explicitly have it authorized legislatively, it seems as though the powers that be believe that's something that could be done rather quickly. I had a serendipitous meeting at an event with Sheriff Apple, who indicated that he has told our sheriff on numerous occasions that he shouldn't be building a jail, and in fact is a big advocate of the concept of shared jails and regional jails, and is exploring the options in terms of what's going on in Schoharie as well. And his perspective as well is, this is baby legislation. There's 47 examples of exceptions in Corrections Law 500 already, and we have, an opinion of the Attorney General authorizing regional jail. So again, I take issue with whether or not, in fact, it's illegal. It's certainly not explicit, although I would, looking at this Attorney General's opinion, it's pretty explicit. And the steps it would take to explicitly authorize this are not as big as I think some folks are fearing in this room that it is, and certainly seems worth trying. And particularly, did everyone, we're talking about democracy. We're certainly hearing, I think, loud and clear from a lot of our constituents that they want us to do our due diligence, at least on this piece. And I don't know whether folks had, I saw Jeff Friedman walk in the room, the Chamber of Commerce sent a letter this morning with a position specifically on this feasibility study. If I don't get an email a day telling me, do your due diligence, this feasibility study. We're talking ultimately, at the end of the day, about a $60,000 study to answer questions that, instead of 14 of us theorizing about them, to answer at least some fundamental threshold questions. $60,000, our sister county has agreed to cover their half, and $50,000 of that we have been all but assured we will get back. So we're talking about a $5,000 expenditure to do due diligence that we've been asked to do, and now by our businesses, who are arguably the backbone of this county.
What questions is the feasibility study going to answer?
I don't have a copy of it with me. Do you
Well,
have
does
it, Mike?
anybody know?
It was
Yeah.
to do core sampling to see if the slide potential which
The
occurred
geotech
downstream
stuff,
from that facility, the layout of the current facility.
What it
see
would
if
take in terms of the upgrades of common
Right.
space. There's a piece about needs assessment piece in there. They've segmented out the different elements.
And the needs
of the
assessment would be a pod and how they reconfigure maybe the female side and the male side, and how they would have to construct a new pod and change things around, along with what Bill had said earlier was an upgrade to their facility to handle a larger volume of inmates. And that's basically what that study.
Well, I don't see it answering anything. We know we can build a jail unless the thing's sliding into the creek.
Well, that's
Well,
I
that
mean,
was,
we can build a jail
that
anywhere
was
as a
the
basis.
number 2 concern that Bill had, is sliding into a creek. So we could get rid of that concern off your list if we did a feasibility study, for sure. The pod, the upgrades and other services, that's the other piece of this. That's number 1 on your list of concerns. The legal remedy for counties, I think that's something we have to pursue for sure.
I don't think those are lists of concerns. I think those are lists of things that would be involved in the project.
I think you
It doesn't
characterize
say
them as your
list of
concerns.
They were mine.
His concern.
Yeah, his concerns. I said Bill's
With
concerns.
the Morris Associates, they're going to do 5 tasks. I got it. Task number 1 was to do the geotech on the slope stability, which is a big concern. The number 2 was the building condition assessment, which is going to be the site, architectural, plumbing, security control, structural. And task 3 was programming and the needs assessment, which again, I don't know how well versed they are in that particular aspect of law enforcement or corrections, but that would be something they put on here. Number 4 was jail capacity and population projection. And then number 5 was to concept additions and renovations. So that was all to be done by this for that one cost. Again, my concern was that they do it, and if it comes out positive, it's something that has not been approved for us to, do we continue with it after that point without any approval from the state that they would allow such a particular joint venture to begin with?
We could be concurrently seeking clarification on this question of legality. And has anybody read the, I'm sure Ed has, but others had a chance to look at the Attorney General opinion on this? Because it's hard to read it as anything other than explicitly authorizing regional jails based on I think it's, I forget, general municipal law section, but also a section of the Constitution as well, the state Constitution. In any case, even if we did have to, or it was in our best interest to get explicit authorization by a one-off exception, of which there's 47 examples in the same segment of law, we could be doing that concurrently and get a true sense of if it's something that can be moved quickly. And then we would, at the same time, have an answer to the geotech piece and the kind of, technical, physical question, as well as the overarching legal question. And again, the potential benefits are so significant, it's just, it's, to Mike's point, reckless of this body to not pursue these options.
Read the Sheriff's Association decision that you got in your box today.
I did not, I
There's a
saw it.
couple Attorney General quotes in there, so you should pay attention to.
I just have a question.
I'm sorry, yeah, but I mean, it's not really a public hearing. However, board willing to allow comments from the audience?
I'm not willing to. I think that would just impede.
There may be a lot to offer. I mean, I'm sorry, but we're talking around circles, and I actually created this committee.
But saying it's just a workshop for us, Scott, just to go over our concerns, because we're the ones that have to vote on it eventually.
Well, we're the ones that have to pay for it.
And so do we.
Mhm.
Bill, I would say that Sullivan County went through a similar process before they voted to build their facility. And I believe it was with Putnam County they wanted to do I don't know if it was a shared facility or regional facility, and the response that they got, they wanted to do a regional facility, I believe it was. The response they got from Commission of Corrections was that New York State has regions, and they're called counties.
And where was
And
this?
they were standing by, that was before Sullivan County voted to do theirs.
He said that here when he spoke to him in the chamber in there.
Right, and they were standing by the fact that it would require.
Were they looking for a home rule change, or?
I don't know if it was a home rule change or if it was a statewide thing that they were looking for at the time. I don't know for sure, but I know that was the comment from State Commission on Corrections at that point, when they were looking to do a regional facility. Their comment was New York State has regions and we call them counties.
And they came down and walked with the Columbia County folks, very specifically on site, to review this.
Yeah,
So
they
they're well aware
did,
that
in the
this is
report, they
happening.
did reference it in a negative way. They don't want us to do
I think that was your interpretation.
That
was
is my
not at all mine.
interpretation, and it's
Where did you
careful.
come up that they said it in a negative way?
I read the report.
As
The
did I.
report's in
I would
here, and
disagree with
they
that.
basically, the message was, we've provided technical advice, we've been down there to work with Greene County on a replacement facility, and nevertheless, the county just decided to pursue a parallel path. And the use of that word nevertheless was made about 4 or 5 times in that report, and it was always in the negative. It was always to say, here's the good thing, and nevertheless, here's the condition that we're observing. It's consistent. And that's exactly how I would use that word also. And when we decided not to kill Columbia County Jail, the next day or two later, we got subpoenaed. And I've talked to people at the Commission of Corrections. They've given no indication that they're in favor of a joint shared jail. But that report to me speaks pretty volumes about their negative view on the whole thing. And it's not just that in isolation. It's in the overall context where we have a jail that is substandard. And we haven't, and it's pretty, I think, pretty clear in that report that they view this county as having been unable to resolve that issue. And we're still unable to resolve it every second we spend talking about a Columbia County jail, because the majority has already voted not to fund the study. And probably more members that weren't voting on that subcommittee would also vote the same way, because we think we have a responsibility to build a jail in Greene County. And so I think we have complete credibility when we stand up and do our job. I know you guys have identified a hypothetical possible way for us not to build a jail in Greene County. And I think all the arguments you're making tonight are the ones we've all contemplated and heard over the months. But yet a vote was had and the decision was made not to fund that study. So how many times are we going to bring it back up and re-vote on it? And if there's no way that we're going to change our minds, then we should move on and design a jail in Greene County that we're going to build and get the job done.
One that we can live with.
I disagree with your interpretation of that word nevertheless, as did
Right,
one of
well-
your very articulate constituents who was pretty clear and sent an email to all of us about disagreeing with you as to how you interpreted that. I would
Yeah,
also
and that
say,
constituent,
if I could finish,
I
didn't
don't know
interrupt
which
you.
constituent you're
I'll-
talking
I'll-
about, but
I'll resend
the
you the email.
constituent.
If I could finish?
You can, but that
Okay, if I could
constituent
finish?
backtracked
If I could
and said,
finish?
Lee, you're right.
If I could finish? Well, he didn't send us all that email. That backtracking. The other piece is that very clearly the commission has said to us in meetings that you were not at prior to your tenure, that as long as we continue to move forward with an exploration of the shared jail, that they would be supportive of. So you're taking things out of context, having not
I
participated
haven't
in any of the
taken
meetings.
anything out of context.
That's my opinion.
I simply say nevertheless, the Commission of Corrections could have shut the jail down right after that report. But nevertheless, we met with them and they talked about a parallel path and they said, show us what you got. So show us what you can come up with. So that tells me they're respecting home rule. Conversation with George Amador as our senator respects home rule. Yes, he worked in previous years to help you acquire the property that we're looking to put the jail on. But he also respects home rule if we, as a collective body, decide to say, let's look at a shared jail. He then would support that, meaning he's not overstepping his bounds
Nobody's
with
ever
home
said
rule.
that. No state agency would ever say we support this, that. They haven't. And you could have marched them
Excuse
in
me,
right here
what
and
did
have
you
them
say?
say it.
That they wouldn't?
That's right. They
The
won't.
senators
That's
told me that
That's
in
what
a
home
phone
rule's
call.
all about. They try to stay out of
That's right.
local decisions. But right now, we don't have the local authority to build a shared jail with Columbia County. There is no such thing as home rule to build a shared jail with Columbia County. That's outside of our authority. That would require state intervention. It's not home rule.
What's the situation with municipal agreements? And I remember back when we first talked about this, you had said some Attorney General opinion back in the early 90s or something about the respecting the municipal agreements, and that there weren't some things that would be, that it was a question if something like this would even require state statute, a change in state statute. And I didn't bring it with me, but I'm sure, Ed, you had brought that up about it.
I could only respond that I'm not prepared to respond to that tonight because I don't recollect what it is exactly that you're referring to, except for the fact that if, in fact, we were to get past the numerous legal hurdles that may be involved in creating a regional jail, an intermunicipal agreement would be part of it, and there's no doubt that intermunicipal agreements don't have illegalities attached to them per se, or constitutional issues, but there are a lot of issues that we would have to deal with. To name just a few, we do have corrections law, we have civil service law, we have Article 13 of the Constitution, we have Article 9 of the Constitution, we have numerous articles in the general municipal law, all which would have to be dealt with simultaneously to get through this. And I can't tell you exactly, sitting here, whether or not it could get done or not. I could just tell you it's a pretty significant lift. It's new.
And the other lift I think that we have enough information on was the shared services initiative that took place last year. We had 14 towns and 5 villages get together with Sean on multiple occasions to come up with lists of different wishes, I guess you would call them, for possibilities of shared services, and not one thing came out of that committee from 14 towns and 5 villages for various reasons, but there was not one thing that came out of there.
Well, there were things that came out of it. It just took a little bit more time.
There was
more time.
there's
In a short time frame, they couldn't come out.
Yeah, there's things that were discussed during those meetings that we would like to see go forward, and I think
I was at some
we
of
talked about more time in this coming year. We'd like to see, like, roads, for example. That was one that I thought was a home run, right? To share services on the roads. So I asked the county administrator to look into that this year. We have more time, and I expect that to take a really serious look about that, along with other things that we talked about, sharing different jobs in the towns and the villages, and make them into one. And there was numerous things discussed that we need some more
there
time.
was 20-something.
Yeah, I haven't shut the door on that.
Nothing got through.
So because things haven't happened in the past, we shouldn't ever try to make things better? I mean, is that sounds to me what I keep hearing.
No.
The work's hard, so let's not do it.
No, that's not at all what I'm saying.
Transformation and positive change and sustainability of a county and of towns rests on the ability to think creatively.
Sure.
And do things better and different sometimes.
Just my take with the Commissioner of Corrections that they've been very gracious about allowing us to do a dual track, one for the Greene, one for Columbia. However, just from dealing with them in the past, their consent to allow us to do it doesn't mean they're going to agree with whatever we come up with. And that has been the sticking point for many of these projects that we're concerned about, because the Commissioner of Corrections has the final say in whether or not something's built, how it's built for corrections. So it's been the fact that they've allowed us to continue on. I just they're consenting to the fact that we might go to Columbia County. I still think that would have to be a home rule message for the legislature, which, again, from the past results, we've not seen any positive action in that part. But anything else about Columbia County? Again, this is just discussion. If we can change minds, fine. If we can't, then we've lost nothing. But anybody else?
Bill, I had time early this morning. I had to reply to your email about this tonight. And one of the things was, and this is what and by the way, on this Sheriff's Association, you have to remember, they may be right, but they are a special interest involved in this case. Every department that we deal with in this county is its own special interest across the state, within this county, and towns. And none of them want to give up things. But unless you, as a taxpayer, are willing to just keep forking over more and more money every year for this, and I'm not talking about the building of a jail. The building of a jail is a fixed cost in a lot of ways, minus the interest. I'm talking about year after year legacy increases, legacy costs. And you can't get away from that. You cannot get away from that. And all I said in that email was, we seem fixated. We do a study, pay for a study. I don't know exactly what it would cost. It was before I became a legislator, to see the needs of a jail facility. That money was spent. Money has been spent looking at design, construction. Money will be spent on the construction. Money will be spent on the interest. Money will be spent on the department year after year after year after year. And we all know that the main drivers to the cost of government increases are endless negotiated pay raises and benefit cost increases, and you can't get away from that. And there's people in that room that received this. And I'm not here to besmirch anybody, but these are the facts. So we spent this, and I did it just a quick thing. If you do this 51 million or 52 million, it'll be about 80 million by the time 30 years is done, paying just for that. At 5 million with our current jail budget, department budget, at 5 million right now, times 30, is 150, $230 million over 30 years. And for the life of me, we can't look. So we're willing to spend and go through that whole method to spend, or we're not willing to do due diligence to try to save at least half of that? Half of that could potentially go back to the people, maybe to help this county prosper.
Okay, so that's the same argument we've heard over and over again, and yet we had the vote, and the vote was to not fund it. So that was the vote.
Then you got it.
And I don't think
You have to live
that
with
nobody
that.
has failed to do due diligence. I think the people that voted not to pursue the shared jail were taking all the considerations into effect, and that was their level best vote for the good of Greene County. It wasn't because they didn't want to do due diligence. I could tell you why I would vote it down for a few of the big reasons. First of all, I don't think it would ever work. Now, I don't have a crystal ball, but I just don't think Ed would ever be able to negotiate a good enough contract to keep all of the various issues, tied them all up in a good way. Number two, I just believe we have a function, kind of similar to what Mr. Linger was saying. Greene County is a region where we have a duty right now to build a jail, and that's what I want to do. And I know we've been kicking this around for a long, long time, and the current jail seems to be getting worse. The Commission of Corrections is breathing down our neck. And I believe that the majority of the people, the vast majority of the people, would not want to do anything but build the jail here in Greene County. So to keep on saying lack of due diligence and, you know, we're losing credibility, I mean, that doesn't influence me whatsoever. I think we have complete credibility to build a new jail in Greene County. And I don't think we are not doing due diligence because we don't want to chase this dream that could take years and years and years and very potentially end up with nothing. And so we've already had the vote. We've already had this debate. It's time to build a jail in Greene County.
Again, going back to the legacy costs, they would not be here in Greene County, but we'd be paying for them in Columbia. There's still going to be a cost associated with this project. We were to go to Columbia County, it's not free. We would have to pay our share of it, and that would include the O&M, the operation and maintenance, as well as the capital cost, the construction of the new pod and or renovations. So we don't get away from paying for corrections. It's just a matter of where that money goes. I think that's another concern.
But nevertheless, though, we haven't had the opportunity to talk about the intangibles and all those components because we stopped it midway, just like the original jail task force. There was components that we should have talked about, like ATI and other solutions, and we failed to do that. We just cut the jail task force off. Then we created another committee because people got upset and stuff over the years. So we're in the same boat, just like we are today. Again, rehashing the jail. And it's good that we talk about the shared stuff, but what about the design plans that we have now? And everybody says about legal and illegal. Well, illegally, you're moving the county sheriff's administration out of the village of Catskill, and down Catskill.
That's incorrect. It's not illegal to move the sheriff's administration. Right now, it's not legal to move the sheriff's civil.
Okay, they're civil.
Well, probably back when they wrote the law, that's probably all that was there.
Right.
That's exactly right.
I don't know, I haven't researched when the law was written, but to me, that makes the most sense.
That's because the rest of the responsibilities that the sheriff has are given by the county. The law enforcement and the investigators
and when our forefathers wrote our Constitution,
we could pull that tomorrow.
They had black belt pellets and knives to survive when they wrote the Constitution.
This board could stop the investigator's office tomorrow. They could stop the law enforcement end of it tomorrow. And the sheriff would strictly handle the jail and the civil office. We could do it tomorrow.
Well, I was just trying to point out that it's not free to go to Columbia County. It's going to be a cost involved. That has not been determined yet. As far as the task force goes, we had 2 jail task force, one in 2002, one in 2012. And we had an ATI task force, which came up with a lot of able ideas to make our population count get reduced. And we've had a new ATI commission task force, which also came up with some good ideas, which we're pursuing now. So I think all those are in place, Kevin. I disagree with the fact that we've done nothing there. I just think that it's a matter of sitting down and deciding what's going to and what's not. We do want to keep the population as low as possible, and I think the trend is towards a lower population. However, it's only been for a couple of years. We have no real strong data over a 10-year, 20-year period like we did before. So the current, and this is what the Commission of Corrections looks at. They look at the long-term trend, not just a short 1 or 2 year. And that's where we're stuck with this thing about the size of it being approved by them, not by us. But again, that would have been true for either option.
Bill, I don't know if I clarify myself properly when you talk about a shared or a consolidation. But we in Greene County are gaining 60,000 people to help pay for a jail operation. And Columbia County is gaining 48,000 people, or however many property owners. It's called expanding the tax base, so you alleviate the burden more of the limited tax base that we have now. That's the whole concept behind consolidation. And I would be open to any kind of consolidation in any departments. But this, along with having to build a $51 million facility and pay for that too, is just overwhelming. And I reiterate, people I've talked to, they understand that part of it. Sure, they, have mixed emotions about maybe some job loss or things like that, but this trend of paying more taxes, we've seen it over the last 2 budget cycles. How were we able to get away from tax increases? We weren't. We had to go up on taxes, on property taxes at the county level. This doesn't stop unless we do things like this. At least fully look into it. And all I would request is everyone, like Lee said, he understands it failed in public safety and that the majority spoke. But I think everyone around this room should say yay or nay to it. And if it still goes down, it goes down, then that's it. And at least people can say, their constituents, hey, I voted nay for this reason, or I voted yay for this reason. Explain themselves to the constituents then. That's all. And then we move on. I got plenty to talk about on a jail bill too, so it doesn't matter either way.
Another piece of due diligence, it seems to me, is making sure that the public is aware of, sort of the accurate information to the extent that we have it when we're talking about, the single biggest capital expenditure by how many times over and quadrupling the current debt. I think we hear over and over again, people don't really know about this and they don't know the details. In fact, our organization that represents our businesses just today developed a position and shared with all of us. I don't know whether we've all seen it, and part of the message was the public doesn't know about this, and as soon as some of the details are shared, it becomes the response is, well, this study, this exploration is a no-brainer. So it seems to me a piece of due diligence and something that is different from the time that the vote first happened at public safety is more and more people are finding out, and our business community has spoken very clearly today asking us to do something. That to me carries weight, and I would think would carry weight with all of us sitting at this table.
Yeah, the public knows the tip of the iceberg of this whole thing. That's why this body exists, because it's our job to see the whole iceberg. The only part of the iceberg the public has seen and heard is that we're going to save lots of money. No kidding. I don't think anybody that voted to not spend more money on that feasibility study was under a misconception that this hypothetical shared jail wouldn't result in saved money. But that's not the end all and be all. There's a lot more to consider. That the I haven't heard one person, and I've gotten a lot of push from the public to keep exploring the jail. And the only thing I heard was how much we're going to save. None of the members of the public, even that letter you talked about today from the county, what was it again? The Chamber of Commerce? They didn't say anything about a lot of the issues, about whether the state's going to pass a law to allow the jail to exist, a shared jail. They didn't talk about whether it's constitutional. They didn't talk about all the issues about how can two sheriffs work together to pull this off. They didn't talk about whether it was feasible to have a contract that we could negotiate to keep all the parties happy. They didn't talk about how much it would cost to build a jail in Columbia County. And I don't think anybody knows. And there's been a lot of time, and I don't see any evidence whatsoever. I don't know how many beds Columbia County has, how many new beds we would need to build. I mean, and this has been going on for months. And yet the most rudimentary stuff.
You said we've done our due diligence.
And nevertheless,
But yeah, you don't have any of these.
No, actually, I didn't say
Exactly.
I've said that you're characterizing us as not doing due diligence, and that's not true.
I agree, that is what I would characterize
Okay,
it.
well, that's
And because we
great.
don't have those answers,
and we haven't even studied
I think
those answers.
that's exactly the point.
The positions that you just brought out, 8 items, we haven't had a chance to even discuss all those.
But the
Part of
point
the
is,
shared
the public, the more they learn, first of all, they're never going to learn what we know. That's why we're here. And to defer to the public, because the public can be stirred up, and their emotions can be stirred up. And they can all say, you guys are doing a bum job because you're going to spend $80 million, and we could save, $70 million building in Columbia County. I mean, that doesn't help me whatsoever. And the Chamber of Commerce letter did not shed one iota of light on it. They didn't elicit any facts or talk about any facts that are relevant that could help us make a decision. Okay, the only issue they brought up is how much we could save. That's not the issue that's driving everybody's decision. There's a lot of other issues.
I just for Lee, your field, you're a patent lawyer, right? And you do patenting, a lot of patent work.
Yeah.
So every once in a while, you get a lot of ideas come through that people want to patent. But every once in a while, there's an idea that changes things. And so I know people want to feel like, hey, this can't work. But if everyone says that every day, we're going nowhere. Nobody's going anywhere.
But you're
So
forgetting
that's
that
why
there's a jail, there's issues about
That's
how
why
the prisoners are being housed, whether the facilities are adequate. And, I've taken a tour through there, and I don't think they're adequate from the side of our employees who have to go to that place every day to work in that environment. I don't know how anybody could have good morale to show up.
There's no disputing that.
Okay, and the
No
jail
disputing
facilities from a prisoner point of view seem to be substandard, and I think the Commission of Correction says so. And how long has this county let this go, and how much longer are we willing to let it go? It's within our power to build a jail, and it's our responsibility to build a jail. You can talk about due diligence. Okay, I'll sacrifice your Columbia County due diligence in favor of my desire to build a jail and uphold our duty in Greene County. So, okay, I'll trade your due diligence for doing my job. It's a fair trade.
Excuse me, Bill. Jonathan is one of my constituents. He's been raising his hand. Jonathan,
Yes, Jonathan Gross. I had a little trouble here. Did you call or ask for another vote on the feasibility study, or a show of hands?
I had asked to settle people's minds or whatever, that everyone wanted to go around
Because I agree.
support it or not support
As a
it.
citizen, I have to say that I hear one voice in opposition. And I would be curious, I mean, this whole thing, and this expenditure makes no sense to me as a citizen, as a business owner. But I'd like to see a show of hands, because I'm hearing only one voice in opposition to this, and I'm not hearing from anybody else. So I agree with you, and I'd be curious.
I mean, topic tonight, John, we weren't going to take any votes or make any decisions. We're just going to listen to each other. We've been trying to resolve ourselves into a single road. And the Columbia County option, which was voted down already in public safety, did not go to the full vote. That's correct. I think Mike was saying that those people that did not have a chance to vote, maybe they should have a chance to vote. And that's why I thought tonight they could express those concerns and at least get that out in the open so we all know where everybody stands.
I think there's another issue that hasn't been addressed either, and that's the age and the condition of the Columbia County Jail currently. They don't have direct supervision, correct, Mike?
Correct.
And that's something that the Department of Corrections is looking for now in all the new jails that are being built. What if in 10 years after we spend money over there and put an extra pod on and give up all our jail, the Department of Corrections comes down and says to Columbia County, okay, you've got to rebuild your jail somewhere. Then where are we? I just don't like being at somebody else's behest for something this important.
But Linda, we would build to current procedures.
We would,
And
yes.
Columbia County would have to also, if they built a new pod, they would have to build it to the aspect.
Stop
of
talking
it.
about the pod.
I'm not talking about a pod, I'm talking about their entire facility,
Well,
of which we would become a part.
So it's actually modified direct supervision. And,
Right.
and for
But
those of
still
you that
not
don't
what-
know, this idea of direct supervision is not exclusively about the infrastructure of a facility. It is in part about the infrastructure of the facility. It's in large part a management style, and it's about, and if you read, the National Institute of Corrections or anybody that sort of, was the sort of definer of this whole idea, it's about a management style as well as the structure. So
But New York
it's
State
about-
is telling us what they want our management style to be.
But so a piece of it is about the construction, but that's just one piece, and part of it already is, what's built new would presumably be direct supervision, but this is about the style of interaction between COs and inmates, people incarcerated. It's in large part about that. It's a management style. It's
Yeah,
not a
I'm
facility
not
structure
talking
issue.
about that in
Well,
general.
so-
That was just something that I brought up
Yeah.
because I had heard that.
Right.
My concern is, what happens if they have to build a whole new facility?
No, well, what I'm
Then what
saying
happens?
is.
Where do we go then?
It only has, in small part to do, or in part
I
to do
agree.
with the
I agree.
infrastructure.
But their
Direct
jail is
supervision is
their
about
jail is
how-
an aging facility.
How corrections officers are trained and how they
I know that,
interact
and-
much more
yeah.
directly with the inmates,
Not,
so.
not my major concern.
Okay, but
I'm not
that's
talking
direct
management
supervision.
style, I'm talking about
Two
building.
pieces, right, so,
How old
okay.
is the existing structure is their question.
Yeah.
Got it.
It's 30 years.
Yeah,
And
88 it was open.
yeah.
And Linda, you bring up a good point, and I have the
88,
same, I
30
had that
years.
same concern I mentioned about the age of the facility over there and how much longer they have on that existing facility over there and what happens next. Very good concern, and I join you in that.
Could that be added to the feasibility?
Yeah, isn't that a
Well,
That's
piece
part of that
that's part of it.
feasibility study.
Part of the feasibility study, if I took a ride over there, and there it looks like they're just backfilling all along the entryway on the road in there. I mean, looks like a maintenance building or whatever. Is this plot of land even feasible for a facility? I'm not saying they can't demolish and put on a pod, and then we're happy as far as right now, but that land is washing out every couple years. Whenever water's high, I mean, the water's washing away the entryway into the road going in. Basically, what I'm saying, I think that needs something that needs. You don't want to buy a Tucker. You don't want to, put all your eggs in one basket, and then all of a sudden, once the rest of the facility becomes antiquated, all we have is the pod. Where is it that it's contiguous, which the Commission of Corrections asks, so that way you're not eminent domain and you have a place to build out when you have to build an addition on it, and if it's antiquated and it reaches its, maximum life. I think these are things that we need to look at. I mean, you don't want to throw however many millions of dollars over there for 40
That's the
years.
feasibility study.
That's
That's
a
going
study.
to tell us that.
Right, to talk
And
about
it may come back. If this would have been approved a month ago, I think they had said May. We would have had results on this, the coring and all of this. And if it came back that, hey, this is a difficult build, I think that there's the large majority, I may still be questionable on it, but I gotta tell you, it would be like, okay, we can't build that. That won't work. And then you're faced with having to build, yes. But we'll never know.
I mean, again, if I may, just to go back to the current state of our jail as of April today, the one consistent message we're hearing is we need a solution of some sort. What needs to happen in 2018, Sean, to keep our jail operational as is? What generalized repairs, upkeep, investment do we have to make this year?
The primary thing now is the boiler system. For the areas that aren't open, it's the aging of the boiler lines themselves. Many of them are exposed lines. Some of them are actually buried in concrete. So as what's called the tuberculation of the line, the constriction of the steam happens, we'll get breaks, and we'll just replace where we can. So I'm not real concerned about boiler lines. And the general facilities, it's 100 years old. The oldest part, there is a newer edition that's, 30 years old?
40.
So, 40. So, and then there's the continued issuance of a variance by the state because the facility is lacking. It's not ADA compliant, there's not sufficient recreation yards, there's a number of structural things you can't repair, you can't fix. It's too old.
And as of today, how many cells are we allowed to have open?
40.
However, we have one of the other units is closed down because we don't have any sinks or toilets in it due to them rotting out.
So we have the ability to have 40 cells, and that's 40 inmates that we could have.
Right, but you're missing it. There's another unit besides that we had to close down. Drop that number even more.
Oh, drop that.
Because there's no toilets or sinks in there that are operational.
And how many inmates are we boarding out now?
As of today, 28.
And all of them are going to Columbia County?
No,
Where else are they going?
Ulster.
And Sean, who's the company that you mentioned the other night that's going to do the secondary study of the building? Did we go for
Catterskill.
Okay. Now, I know we had Delaware go back and during the jail task force and look at the building and give us recommendations and stuff to fix it. And I believe that we did marginal aspects of that.
That's correct.
Here we are in 2018. We've been talking about the jail for almost 4 years, 5 years, and yet we still haven't come out with a 5-year or a 10-year plan for the jail to rehab it if needed. If we would have did the original study that I asked for back in the original jail task force, we would know the full condition of the jail. We asked Pike to do that, and on the assumption that they did do that during one of the meetings, they said to me, we did not do it, we just did a walkthrough. So we just did a walkthrough and look at the condition of the building. That's not how you do a complete inspection of a building, to know what the structure is, the components of that structure, or anything. Right now, we have $1.1 million left over from the sheriff's budget from last year. I think we need to really invest in that building if we're going to continue in this path that we are tonight, because I don't see us having a solution unless we start talking about more details and more components of it.
I still have a question. What needs to happen, have we surpassed the building season for 2018?
No, we're close. I would say I have a window about 8 weeks before I lose the balance of the 18th season. 8 more weeks.
And we should be working our tails off to make sure that that doesn't happen. And chasing down the Columbia County options, spending more time tonight, I don't know how long we've been talking about it tonight, is lost opportunity to get in the 2018 construction cycle.
Sean, what have we already invested in the Cooksaki site?
I think it's closer to $2 million now.
With that being said, what are the infrastructure needs for that site?
That's a rather broad question, so can you? There's-
In regards to like water, sewage.
The off-site water and sewer is about 900,000.
And the infrastructure that would be built, that allows for how much of a growth? How many cells do we potentially build to one day?
Well, the original.
What do you think of the length of time that would take to go back to remove that section of building?
I'd have to say weeks.
When we originally looked at the 103rd bed facility, do we recall the tax burden per assessed value of home, $100 or $150,000 approximately?
36 or
I was going to say 37.
So
36 per 100 or something like that.
36 per 100,000. All right. And shared services grants. Lori, maybe you could speak to this. When they spoke about the ability, if there was some sort of shared services initiative, what would be the grant opportunity for that?
20% of a 10-year cost savings would be the complete grant. It's a phased program. The first phase, we'd be eligible for $50,000, which is what we've referenced would cover the, lion's share of the feasibility study. And then the second phase, I don't remember off the top of my head. I think it's maybe, Mike, do you remember? It's a 35%, I think, of the total 20%, the total eligible amount, which again is 20% of the 10-year cost savings. And then the other 65 some odd percent would be at the completion. But the total is 20% of what the 10-year cost savings would be.
And
Not a competitive grant.
Not a competitive
No,
grant.
it's not a competitive grant.
Not competitive.
No, it's not a
25 million in
competitive
there
grant.
for this. Wasn't it 25 million they put in that for this purpose?
Yeah, it's absolutely not a competitive grant. The fellow who heads the project was clear about that.
So just to confirm with the date that was given earlier in this discussion, the Columbia County Jail was built in 1988.
It was opened in 1988.
Opened. And it is a modified direct supervision.
No. It's an indirect. Lineal with a small portion of dormitory.
Yeah. So Legislator Rivera brought this up a long time ago. Was it ever brought up with the Board of Supervisors, and certainly to echo what Legislator Torges said before about Albany County and potentially other counties, about a shared service facility that we build here? Like, how long is the construction going to take? If we were to decide to build in 2018, when would the jail site in Kentucky be built?
It's probably an 18 to 24 month cycle, and then there'd be some shakedown after that.
Between 2 to 3 years.
I don't think we'll go 3 years.
2 years. That put the Columbia County Jail at a almost 33, 34, 35-year-old jail, depending on the stretch. Was there ever conversation with the Board of Supervisors for those who attended the meetings?
Yes, there was.
And what was their vision for that?
They weren't interested at this time, but when I had mentioned to it, if both counties can realize enough savings and squirrel money away, towards the anticipation that both counties then would have to eventually build a new facility because of Columbia County's age now, that you could basically, with a portion of those savings, self-fund the construction rather than have to go to bond at that point. If you could hold the line on making sure you dedicated a certain amount to a type of fund for that. And they really didn't, we didn't pursue it any more than that. It was just a passing thing, but they were understanding of that point that, yeah, maybe in 30 years or 20 years that they may have to, because their facility is past its age. God, I would hope not. I would hope that public officials can make sure that you build a building of this cost to at least last 50 plus years. But
we have a 40-year-old section that's not so great. You know, think it depended on the building codes at the time and materials being used and things like that, which you don't know.
But you also have to have strategic planning. For example, the roof on this building, you know?
Yeah.
We took the
Yeah,
proactive
maintain.
approach to it. We saved a lot of money by going out and getting the roof fixed now and getting an extended warranty on it. The same thing with that building. Over the years, we have not put a dead set into it to bring it up to what we need to. Over the years, for not having a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, a 25-year plan. And we don't have that for any of our buildings.
All right, we're going to the next topic. We've been talking about it anyway. That's the Greene County Jail here on the Capitol site, which is another option that we discussed and discarded because we thought the jail itself, being 100 years old in most parts, would not be suitable to renovate, not be suitable to tear down and then reconstruct. However, it was an option, and with the declining jail numbers, the fact that we're now boarding out 28, we have 40 available, 68 total. Does anybody still want to talk about that particular option?
I think originally, Bill, if we went and got the information for that building during the first jail task force, we would have the information, but we never vetted that. We never looked at that component intangibles about that building.
You mean the second jail task force?
The second.
The one, the jail task force in 2012, which I think the consensus of that particular group, and we can look at the minutes, was that we not build there, that we tear that down and give it to the village. But now we still have it, obviously, since 2012. And my concerns with this, and I'll just repeat these are the ones I sent to you. It was a very small parcel to start with. It's a very small parcel in the village of Catskill. It would need the same upgrades that we're talking about for any jail that we build if we're going to construct or renovate it to keep it here. It would have to be vertically built if we're going to use that same parcel, which is more expensive than laying it out horizontally like we do with the other two options. It would if we're going to use eminent domain, that would be a question that we'd have to decide as well, because in order to take parcels adjacent to the structure itself would require eminent domain by this board. And if we're going to tear that down and rebuild it, we'd have to board out all the prisoners during the time that we do that construction, about 24 months. Does anybody still see that as an option?
No, absolutely not. I think building it vertically in a historic downtown is just a crazy idea. You're going to have a building that is higher than the view shed of the street above it, and you'd be taking down houses on that one side of the street to accommodate expansion of the jail, and that puts you right in the middle of a historic register or residential area, the east side residential area. So I don't see the village people as accepting that at all. I wouldn't if I lived in the village.
And I think we had a recommendation from SMRT and Pike both that it was a bad idea and very expensive.
And you still are not really doing anything to address parking.
The other question about it needing to be close to the Greene County Courthouse, I think it's about, Mike can better answer this, about 30% of our inmates have to go to the Greene County Courthouse. Most of them have to travel through the other municipal courts throughout Greene County. So having a place next to the courthouse is convenient for 30%, but it doesn't necessarily have to be true for the rest of them. And Mike, is that really correct?
Actually, I would say like 95% of the inmates start off in the local court first, and then they would get get transferred to the county court, correct?
Anybody else on that, Tom?
You're my representative, so
You live in Carroll?
I'm in Athens, actually.
Oh, then it's Mr.
No, I
He'll never let me talk.
No, I did let you talk. I did let you
No,
talk.
you said tonight you wouldn't.
Oh, that's right. And I'd say tonight, no.
Don't go back on your word.
We'll do it in court. I don't care.
It kind of ties into the Catskill option just a tiny little bit. Is how much are we paying for boarding out at the moment?
$75 a day.
what's our annual, I shouldn't say that, what are we planning in our budget per year?
You have 750 in the budget.
750,000?
And you just spent 530.
How much is the cost for the annual bond for the next 30 years? Approximately, for 51 million.
It's 2.8, but you net out the reduction of the boarding, so it's 2.1.
2.1 million. Just speaking about the Village of Catskill, if there was, right now we have $500,000 in the jail budget to just take the building down.
Correct.
Right. So if that was to go to a, I'm just going to use it as a private sector parking garage, let's envision that for 2 seconds, behind the courthouse, and gave the property then back, that's across the street from the courthouse, through Stat Fitness over to the white building there, the apartment building, and let that be built upon for economic development of shops in the lower end, apartments on the top, and then the private sector parking spot. Did we ever estimate what that type of sales tax revenue plus property tax revenue would be? Would it be impossible to do, or?
What kind of shop is it?
It would depend on what went there.
What are they going to sell? What's their volume? What's their
assessed value?
I guess, yeah, it's like, is there anything new that we could viewpoint? Looking for approximately.
We have vacancies on the existing Main Street. I don't know if there's a market for additional office space.
Your point being that if it were used for commercial development, it would offset the cost.
Trying to look at if it's 750,000, minus the 2.8 million dollars that we're quote unquote bringing down to $2 million, what then would that take it down to even more, and how that would that assess the per property tax owner tax? Well, we're doing a lot of hypothetical language.
I have no way that's.
Okay. Thank you, Bill.
Okay, okay. Just the other one that we spent a lot of time on, one task force in 2012, and this board here in particular for the last 3 years has been the design that we've proposed for Coxsackie, New York, and that has been based on the fact that we had property given to us by the state of New York, 50 acres in Coxsackie near the correction facilities that already exist there. We did attempt a bond issue for $44 million in 2017. That was voted down, but then it was reinvigorated or brought back, reconsidered in 2018, which is where it is right now. The USDA, the bonding for that has gone up to about $52 million because of increases in cost for commodities, which is what Sean pointed out happened because of the timeline and because of the use of those materials and other construction is currently taking place. So if that, ignore the other two options, if we're going to look at just the Greene option in Coxsackie, one of the holdups has been the right sizing of that jail, make sure it's the right size. Right now it came down from 130 beds to 80 with 19 or 18 transition beds. So it's a total of 98 that would be possible in that location. And so that's brought down the cost, or originally brought down the cost, now it's been upped again. But the Sheriff's Administration was part of that package. Sheriff's Administration, which includes all the road patrol, locker rooms, sheriff, undersheriff, lieutenants, and so on, would all be housed in that one location in Coxsackie, taken away from Catskill. And that was a holdup for some of the people here in the room. So my argument has been that, and Ed Kaplan pointed this out, that the Sheriff's Civil Office, the Civil Office, which deals with subpoenas and such, has to be in this county seat, correct, Ed? So,
absent a referendum.
Unless we do a referendum, I suggest that maybe we should consider if that's going to be the case. But if that civil office can be located right here in this building, then the rest of it, the administration part that's outside of that, could go to Coxsackie if need be. That is a holdup for some of the voters here in this room. So the question is, besides the ones I know about, anybody else that has that same feeling, you kept in Catskill.
How does it affect operation of the sheriff's department?
The sheriff, from discussions with us, I think at Public Safety, has been pretty much in favor of putting everything in one location. It's easier to do the schedules, it's easier for the people to, but besides, the road patrol is scattered already. We've got auxiliary places in most of the towns in Greene County. So really, the people that are at that sheriff's administration meetings, or when they would come to those meetings, they have to come to some location. We don't want the sheriff traveling to 2 different locations, one in Catskill, one in Coxsackie.
And to keep the whole administration part of the sheriff's department in Catskill, would we have to do new construction somewhere or renovation?
We'd have to renovate, we assume the renovation would take place in the current sheriff's office right there, next to the jail, which is an older building itself. It's not ADA compliant.
Can we ask for the undersheriff's opinion on, or I'm sorry, the superintendent of the jail's opinion on how it would affect operation, or someone else in the sheriff's department? Can they shed light on how it would negatively affect the operation of the sheriff's office if we were to keep the whole administration part of the sheriff in Catskill, as opposed to moving it to Coxsackie with the jail?
Mike, you want to
Well,
comment?
I mean, first off, you're operating 2 buildings. You're paying the upkeep of 2 buildings. You're paying for heat, you're paying for the services. Sheriff interacts with the jail as well as the undersheriff on a daily basis. Granted, they could probably do that by telephone, but, you know, the meetings and things that take place on a daily basis.
iPads.
You know,
Let me finish, please.
you know, the meetings that take place on a daily basis with the supervisory staff. Meetings on the general operation of the office would be affected.
We did have a cost estimate as well for rehabilitation, a couple different options actually for the Catskill site.
No, no,
For the Catskill site,
never.
with Pike, is it Pike?
We did.
We had a formal plan by Pike that he gave to us for that facility.
Yeah, I came up with
We had 3.
Right. I'd like to see that documentation then, and report. If there's a report that was done on that building, I think all the legislators have a responsibility to look at that report. But there's no report.
I had it up.
Yeah, it was in an email. We had 3 options of rehabbing what was there. We had an option of tearing down and building new, and an option that included purchasing the St. Pat's campus, I believe it was.
That was hypothetical numbers.
Right,
They
but
never
that
did
was
a physical
the
report of
98
it,
number,
okay?
wasn't it?
Everything
Nevertheless.
so far has been hypothetical numbers. You
Well,
can't
we
get
do.
numbers until you pass a bond so you can put it to
From the same
To go out
architects that want to build
for
a
bids.
facility.
Right, and we had Delaware
everything
going
is
there.
estimates to this point.
Right, we had Delaware going there that wanted to do the rehab for the building. They gave us them because they have a big stake into it because they're leading the project out in Coxsackie. Why wouldn't they give you a bad report?
Delaware did with the report.
Yeah.
Was that report, I just don't remember, I remember the report, I just don't remember the numbers because they've changed numerous times, the number of cells, we did.
It's just for
He's
the
talking
jail.
about
Sheriff's administration.
Piece,
She's
okay,
talking about
we
the-
backed up to
No, no,
the
about the
count,
house.
okay, got it.
I think that's where Kevin's talking about the house.
And I think if I remembered correctly, the cheapest of the 3 options was tearing down and building new square footage on this site.
No.
I mean, the cheapest of those 3 options. It was 1.9 million savings to pull it out of the Coxsackie building and 3.2 million to build here.
That's 3.2, 3.8, and something like that.
New York State is not citing that the sheriff's administration is the problem. The building is not the
The
problem.
the 4th option to that was do nothing.
Right.
Right.
Bill, did you look into, did you say, I know Herkimer County is right now in the process of building a jail as well, significantly larger for significantly less money? I think, did you, and I think Bill or Mike, could somebody speak to,
I got
because
this
I
question
believe that.
from a constituent who came to the last public safety meeting, when we had in the other room. And he said, he asked me about Herkimer County, how can they do it so much cheaper? And I looked up online, I could not find any actual estimates of what they spent. I did read that they'd gone from 44 million to 30, some 35, 32. And that
32 million.
they took out their sheriff's administration as part of that reduction in cost. And I could not find the original board minutes. I looked at their board, I couldn't find those numbers.
I talked to their budget director out there, $32 million facility with 130 beds, no sheriff's administration. They saved $4 million by not putting the sheriff's administration. They pulled 9,000 square feet out of that facility to save $4 million.
More of the paint, 800,000 in paint.
600,000.
It's a whole list.
Yeah, there's a whole list.
It's a whole list, but it hasn't passed either.
It has passed.
It's stuck in a lawsuit though.
I don't know where the lawsuit
As
is
of
from.
today, yeah.
By who?
The property. They can't get the property.
Mike, I spoke to the jail administrator out there this afternoon when I heard about those numbers. And that quote that everybody's throwing around of 32 million was 5 years ago. They shelved it. They shelved it because of cost at that time. They brought it out in 2017, and their estimate is now $42 million with zero contingency. And the reason they don't have any office space for the road patrol is because they don't have a road patrol in Herkimer County under the sheriff's office.
Okay. So I just got figures that they just passed it for $32 million in the end of February, February 22nd. Approved a $32 million bill. And it's in front of the Commission of Corrections right now. They expect approval, be out to bid by July. So somebody's not telling the truth here.
Yeah,
Don't know who.
I'm only quoting what Captain McGrill told me this afternoon. This is the numbers he gave me when I called him on it.
Well, that's the budget director that gave me these numbers, so.
Schoharie County's was estimated at 44.3.
All I want to know is 32 million for 130 beds. If this is the case, we got 98 beds and we're 20 million more?
Schoharie County was estimated at 44.3 for 68 beds, and I believe their bids are supposed to be open tonight.
They're going to build a Taj Mahal out there because FEMA's paying for it.
FEMA pays for 75%
That's
of
why.
it.
Correct.
Just going back to the sheriff's administration then, is that still an obstacle to getting that design complete?
Well, I mean, first of all, I'd like to see the current print that we have for design of the building, because somehow it went from 88 to 80, yet the diagram didn't change. So do we have an official print from SMRT for the design of the building?
You have it.
And could you go get that so we can start looking at it, Sean? And what revision number are we up to on that print? And David?
Council has informed us that it would be better if we didn't show this to anybody but the board members themselves. So, in order to maintain that confidentiality at this point, because we've not gotten to the point of bonding it, I'd like to ask for an executive session for a few minutes.
Make a motion.
You
Can it be done for that?
You can't go into executive session.
I'm sorry.
We're not talking contracts.
Before you go into executive session, I know you're going to discuss things, but I would like to just mention a couple things, and then I'm and I would ask my county legislator.
I will allow Joe to speak. I will speak.
Thank you. Now, I'm talking to you strictly on financial issues. I'm not talking to you about whether a shared service is great or it's not great, whether there are going to be issues that are going to come up over the 30 years that will probably happen that none of us here would ever think about. And 30 years from now, I'm going to be dead. But I wanted you to know that if you looked at the bond, the $51 million that we're talking about now, and this includes interest, it would cost the county $2,772,938 a year in principal and interest. That relates to approximately, and I have it by town if everybody wants to know, but for the town of Catskill, that would be on a house assessed at $100,000, that would be $81.18 per year would be the effect of the tax rate on this bond. So over 30 years, it would cost somebody around $2,500, $2,600. A house assessed at $100,000. If you looked at the cost of a shared jail, and these are my numbers, or you can agree with them or not agree with them. If you take 365 days and you have an average of 56 prisoners, and over 30 years, that's 613,200 prison days. And assuming that you're going to be charged $135 a day, whatever you negotiate, over a 30-year period, that's going to be $82,782,000. Now, all those numbers are obviously subject to change because, Columbia County's jail may go bad or something may happen over our jail. We don't know. And so everything you do today should be only predicate on how much you think it's going to cost over a period of time to get this project going. So when it's only going to cost a taxpayer, and Catskill's the highest because our equalization rate is so low, and it's by equalization rate because that's the way your county budget, at $86 a year, I certainly would, as a taxpayer, be willing to spend $86 a year for a brand new jail that at least was going to last me at least 30 years, and for my children and my children's children, hopefully. And when the Chamber of Commerce comes out and says, well, we think a shared jail is better, it's kind of nebulous because I don't think the Chamber of Commerce knows what the tax rate's going to be, or what it potentially could be, or what the tax rate could be for any of you sitting here trying to make a decision, a financial decision. You need to know what that tax rate, potential tax rate could be within a margin of whatever you want to call it, margin of error. And sitting here talking about square footage and tariffs going all over the place in Columbia County, you at least need to know where you're going to start with a dollar rate. So either that tax rate will go down as you shrink the cost of the jail, or the tax rate will go up as you go over a 30-year period. But I would certainly be careful about building a shared service that you know is probably going to last for a long period of time, of which you may or may not ever have control over. And that's the key item. And now I'll let you go back to your executive session. And it's a financial issue. I'm not saying I agree or disagree with both proponents of what you want to do, but you know definitely where I agree. Now go back and tell your constituents how much it's going to cost them per year, and let them know.
Yeah. I'm Jeff Friedman. I'm the person who sent you the letter from the Chamber of Commerce. I'm the president of the Chamber of Commerce. I can tell you one thing. I've been dismayed at how mischaracterized what we wrote you guys has been interpreted. Mr. Palmatier, you completely missed the point of that letter. I don't think you read it very well.
Tell me the point of the letter.
Well, because what we asked you was explore every possibility. We are fully aware of the law and the challenges with the law. We spoke with our membership about that. We are fully aware of all of the items that have been brought up here tonight. What we asked you was, and we could have written you a 5-page letter or a 50-page letter if you wanted us to be detailed about what we were asking, but we summarized it, which was go down and study every possibility that you have before you. You have 2 viable or potentially viable possibilities in front of you. Spend the small amount of money. We've already spent $2 million on the potential of a $51 million or $52 million or $50-some million jail, which we are asking you to also study. Take a look at what your residency rates are in the jail, what your occupancy rates are. Take a look at the design of the jail. Find cost cutting if you can. What we also said was you have a shared jail study which could save the county significant money. I also would take offense a little at what's being said there about the Chamber of Commerce. We're fully aware of the tax numbers.
You're not fully aware of it.
We
If you
are
would have, you
fully
would have
aware.
mentioned it in your letter.
We did.
I don't disagree with you.
I'm not here to
Studies.
debate. I'm not here to debate. What I'm here to say is the tax utilization rates are based on a $100,000 home. The median rate of a home in Catskill is $168,000.
So it's
the
$100 a
prices
year.
are more. It's $140 a year. Additionally, the chamber did look at all of these figures and numbers, has discussed this. I have personally sat down with about 100 of our members who are asking you folks to examine everything, to get every study fully done, to take a look at these items in their completion, have all the facts before you. You do not have all the facts about the shared jail. You haven't even done the feasibility study. If the feasibility study comes back tomorrow and it says you can't build the jail there, you can't upgrade that facility so that it'll last another 50 years, then we would certainly come out and say, build a jail, but study that jail, the jail we have to build in Coxsackie, and make sure that what you're building is in the best interest fiscally, financially, and in the public safety interest of our constituents. That's all we're asking. We're not telling you don't build a jail. We didn't say that. We did not come out and say take the shared jail. We do not take a position. I will not have the chamber be in here and be mischaracterized. We asked you to just get all your facts and figures before you make a decision. It seems to me by sitting here quietly that everyone in this room has made up their mind already. There are 5 of you who don't want to do it, and there are 9 of you who do. And that is a stalemate because you need a supermajority. So this county needs to move forward. We are asking you to make the decision that's in the best interest financially and in the interest of public safety. But you can't do that without the facts, and I have not seen anything or heard anything here tonight that tells me you have all the facts, because you have not gotten all the facts in the shared jail. If the shared jail can be done, and look, from what I have spoken to our representatives, I've spoken to Amador's office, I've spoken to the governor's office, nobody is saying no about making this happen legislatively. They're not saying yes, they're not saying anything. They're waiting for you guys to ask. If you don't ask, you don't know. Those questions have not been asked. They have not, the request has not been made. If you were to have Columbia County asking their senator and assembly people, and our Senate and assembly people asking, that's a lot of people asking, and it probably gets passed. The governor's office has sat there and told us over and over, shared services, consolidate, find cost savings. This fits that mode. If the governor's office isn't supporting that, they're not supporting shared services. And that's basically where we stand. Thank you, Mike.
Motion to go into executive session by Mr.
Bill. Wait, I want some clarification
I'm
first.
actually homeless, so no, literally, I'm in a homeless motel by DSS, and I would like the opportunity. I'm sorry,
All right.
but I actually have something to contribute.
Make it very clear, no personalities.
No personalities. So I asked the Senator Bonnie, because he had the bill since 2010 that would create this shared opportunity where contracts would be more legitimate. Since 2010, it's passed the Senate 60-0, 58-2, 60-0. It was only picked up in the Assembly once, but for no particular reason. So I did contact my representatives, and I did ask them, they're Democrats, they're Republicans. Absolutely clear. It's already been in there. It's already perfectly fine. And it will pass. They're now fast tracking that particular one. And then this issue of whether it's absolutely legal or not is pretty much irrelevant. So the opportunity to save 52 million, if you actually look at the interest, that's 90, that's 80, at 52 million, it's $88.5 million with the interest of 3.15 over 30 years. And that's all that is on top of the 2% property tax cap, every single penny of it. And we have a declining population, and there's no growth in the county. You don't have the money. All the social reasons are a completely different thing. The only thing I very gently suggested was that you fund ATI. This was a very good committee. This will bring your costs down more than anything because it's an intelligent group that looks exactly at who we have as detainees. These are not prisoners. These are people we're holding temporarily till we figure out what to do with them. That's the priority. I've been in that stupid jail for a year and a half. I've been in state prison for 2 years and 9 months. And my cases were reversed. I'm the only one in this room that's actually had to be in that situation and understands what it's like. We don't want to do that to people. The only thing we're discussing is building more human cages.
Okay, thank you.
And then we don't have the money. This is what we need. We need an ATI committee that's funded, that's standing.
We are talking about that now.
Mr. Lawrence, before we go into executive session, et cetera, I believe that we're in a workshop, so an executive session came to call. Second of all, this group of legislators passed the USDA grant with all the prints that were supplied with it, so it is public knowledge to look at those prints.
I'm just going by our attorney's record.
But he's wrong. And he's absolutely wrong. We need to He blocked me from the foils, and then I asked USDA, and they said, sure. USDA is perfectly fine. How can you know how much of the jail has the sheriff's office if you can't see the damn plans?
Let the attorney speak, please.
He blocked my FOIL already, and I got him overridden by USDA when I FOILed them instead of him.
Okay, Scott. Scott, now you're getting emotional.
I'm going to decline to speak to this.
Okay.
Good. Pick it up.
And then where are you from, sir?
Well, I just bought a house in Catskill Village, so whoever it is.
Catskill?
You.
Okay. Wayne Sheridan. I just want to say one thing. I was in that, I guess you would call it the Public Safety Committee. And one thing I said it was a no-brainer that you should fund the study. I'm going to say it again. It's a no-brainer. For $5,000, you are not going to do a feasibility study on an alternative? I mean, I will personally do an all-county revolt against you guys if you do not do that. And I'll just tell you, you guys are Republicans, okay? I'm what do you call it?
I'm a Democrat.
Unregistered. Okay. But I was the head of the Conservative Party on the 49th District of Brooklyn. So I'm very conservative. And who in the world, what kind of Republicans would you be if you can't fund a $5,000 study to see if you can possibly do this? I mean, it's absolutely absurd. That's it.
I'm a correction officer in Greene County Jail. Okay, I've been there 22 and a half years. This thing has been going on forever and ever. I've watched 3 different sheriffs. Okay, 1995 Sheriff Keebler turned around and saw a need for a jail. Because you know what? At that time, we boarded in inmates from Dutchess County and other places where Greene County was making money. In 2003, one of my fellow co-workers was jumped by an inmate in the middle of the night because of that jail. You are in charge, and no pointing to you, but that jail has been a sore spot forever. It needed to be done a long time ago, not now. I have people who ended up, younger people, seeing the need for a profession Not just, oh, I'm gonna work in McDonald's, to raise their families, to have kids, which they've started to do. I've watched this jail go down, 4 tiers, 3 tiers, and $200,000 spent in 2009 to somewhat put a Band-Aid on a deep cut. It's a profession, and everybody looks at it. You work in sweltering conditions. Sewage that has come up, they fixed it or tried to fix it. It's putting a Band-Aid over a deep cut. And then for people that I work with that have just started to have a house and then be without a career, I'm almost out the door. Okay, but in 2006 came out an article from you, from Commission of Corrections, that they said that we needed a new jail there because the ventilation was bad. It was bad then, it's bad now. And hearing this and that and prolonging the agony is not doing any good. It should have been done a long time ago, and I feel ashamed of how this is run. People's lives are in stake. Inmates, whether they like them or not, it's not about that. It's about being humane and doing the right thing for the workers. I am a homeowner, I'm a taxpayer, and I'm a voter. And prolonging the agony, I'm all about saving money, because I'm going to retire. For 8 years, I didn't have a contract. And at the end of 22 and a half years, I now make $23.49. That's not a lot of money for corrections. And if you do get a new pod, what are you going to do with the new pod? Are you going to have Columbia County's officers watch 24/7 and pay for those correction officers and put the other people out of a job? I mean, you know, we talk about figures, and I'm all about that. But, you know, it needs to be done. Something needs to be done. Nobody's really cared about the correction officers. They might say, oh, yeah, but nothing's been done. Our health insurance has changed, okay? I have to pay a $2,000 deductible now. And I'm around the worst conditions that can be, even every disease that's imaginable. And that's part of my profession. And that's how my county thanks me, is changing my health insurance, but not giving me a place to work and go home and not worry that I end up having TB given to all you, my family, and whoever else I come along with. MRSA and everything else. Nobody thinks about that. So everybody can look at that.
Thank you. That was, I agree with everything you said. Thank you. And I hope you mean we should build a jail, because I agree.
He's not saying we should build a jail.
Well, then I misunderstood what she said.
You say that whenever everybody says. You say, well, that's what they said.
I want to get it done. I want to give you a place to go to work. I want a good jail. Both sides, both the offices where the officers spend a lot of their day, the administrative staff. That building over there is a piece of junk, and I wouldn't send anybody there to work. We need a new jail. I don't know what your ultimate conclusion is, but I want to get it done for the reasons you said. And I do care.
22 and a half years. 20, and it was talked about where we could have made money. And also,
are you saying we should build a jail or not?
I think so, definitely.
Okay, well, thank you.
And the Commission of Corrections have been involved. They
inordinate amount of power to delay this thing. And
I think that's very incorrect, Mr. Palmetier.
That's
because we're trying to do our due diligence to keep the price down and make sure to do what's right for the taxpayers. And I say, if we're going to take a vote, let's stop grandstanding and put the bond up.
Yes, thank you.
I really think we've
Okay?
reached that saturation point. It's
Because I
been
think
2
it's wrong.
hours of discussion.
Yeah, but where are we, Bill? We're no place. We're no place.
It's where we were when we started, Kevin.
Right, we're no place different.
Okay, so
No
then,
place different.
let's do the history of when this should have been done.
Absolutely.
And you know
No,
what?
no,
That's
that's a
what the
waste of time.
legislators need to look at. When it should have been done. Not dragging it down, waiting for the doors to close. Every day that I've come in and my fellow officers wondering if we're going to have a job. I'm near the end of my career, but I feel sorry for my co-workers that are just starting out, that just bought a house, that just had kids. And then we're faced with our insurance changing and our county couldn't even provide us
I
with
think
a
you made your
safe
point
and
good
healthy
the first
place
time.
to work in. Shame on this county. I'm going.
Okay, I'm gonna ask for a motion to adjourn.
Yes.
We're not gonna talk about numbers
No,
again?
I think I fair.
So when are we gonna get together again, Bill?
That's up to
We,
you guys.
I mean, we have a
I'm surprised it's trying to get us
2018,
to-
we have a
I don't think
2018.
we've gotten any closer together.
Ain't gonna happen.
So I'm gonna make a motion to adjourn.
Before we do that, I want to say something.
Larry wants to say something.
I think we should do a feasibility study, because otherwise, I think we should do a feasibility study, our own feasibility study, with our own issues that we have to address and get answers. We need clarity in this room, because otherwise, even those who, for whatever reason, want a facility in Cooksaki, you're not going to get the bond passed unless there's clarity on all of these issues. You'll bring people who might be opposed to it. With clarity, you'll bring people possible. If the feasibility study shows it can't be done, then it can't be done. And then you'll have your majority and you'll get your financing. Otherwise, I don't think there'll be the financing, and everything we're doing for nothing.
I disagree. I think we'll get the financing. I don't think that
You
people
won't.
will turn down the bond, because we have.
You're not gonna get it.
And there's no feasibility study that's gonna answer all these questions.
Well, it'll get us a lot closer.
Okay, we're adjourned.
Thank you.